Hey folks, thank you for tuning in today. My name is Dale Davidson, the Dear VA Guy. Don't know if y'all know this, but I'm kind of a YouTube junkie and I love to watch the videos at night. And I came across this one regarding a Washington Post article regarding allegations of abuse by veterans. And it was by the Salty Man, and say, hey, check that guy out. I've really enjoyed his work, and he's doing good things for you folks. So, but let me give you a kind of a summary of the Washington Post article. I went and pulled it, and it talks about somebody I don't realize that reporters did investigations anymore, but they talked about investigating and exploiting veterans, exploiting the Department of Veterans Affairs, and specifically with respect to disability compensation, because there was weak oversight. And we're going to talk about this, but let me just go through the article real quickly. So the reports noted that a dramatic rise in disability cost, and there's almost $200 billion annually. It was 193 billion, sorry. So that's a lot of money. And they said about 6.9 million veterans currently receive VA compensation. We'll realize what compensation is. Compensation is, again, benefits because you were injured in service, or you have an injury that manifested outside of service but was caused by your service. And that prime example is Agent Orange, burn pits, and things of that nature. So this article goes on to said that billions are being paid out for minor or non-combat related conditions. This is hair loss, sleep apnea, acne, hemorrhoids, and while fewer veterans receive compensation for severe combat related injuries. Well, guess what? We don't have a whole lot of combat going on, thank goodness, okay? But that doesn't mean that our veterans aren't being injured through non-combat means, okay? Toxic exposure being one of them, a big one, all right? So this article is kind of misleading, and I take exception to that, saying that billions are paid out for minor or non-combat related conditions. The article mentions sleep apnea, but the article doesn't tell you that sleep apnea is often associated with hypertension, high blood pressure, coronary artery disease, type 2 diabetes, depression, anxiety. All of those things have an impact on your sleep, which causes sleep apnea. Everybody says that's kind of a minor thing, but it's not, because you've got to look at the why. What is the root cause of their sleep apnea? Well, it's high blood pressure. Why? Because they did this or that in the military. Or their coronary artery disease. Why? Because they were exposed to Agent Orange or toxic burn pits. Okay. I laughed at the hemorrhoids part, because you think that that's how is that related? But that could be a chronic constipation related to service condition of diet while deployed. I don't know if any of y'all have ever eaten MREs, probably the majority of you have, but then, I mean, you guys are out there eating a lot of stuff that us Americans are not eating, and hey, look, sometimes it doesn't agree with you. Or there may be a manifestation of service-connected liver disease or hepatitis. Maybe your MOS, you had to lift heavy things, and your lifestyle factors during service led to chronic hemorrhoids. Maybe you have PTSD and your hemorrhoids are secondary to stress-related bowels. So again, the article is misleading, naming sleep apnea, hemorrhoids, lost hair, whatever, but they don't tell you the why. Why are these veterans suffering these things? And if they are related to your service connection, then dadgummit, you're entitled to that compensation. So those are just some examples of why a veteran may have made what appear to be absurd claims. They're not absurd claims. They're directly related to his or her service connection or her service, okay? And if they are in the disability rating tables, you're entitled to it. Period. End of story. So the article cited examples of veterans falsely claiming paralysis or blindness. And I don't understand how that happened without some kind of conspiracy from the doctors, because if I'm filing a claim for paralysis or blindness, then the VA is supposed to send me to a C&P exam or arrange one for me so I can get there. I don't know how these types of claims, maybe it fell through the cracks, but how you could claim paralysis or blindness when you're not paralyzed and not blind, if you're going through the proper channels. These kinds of cases are getting through, then that's a process failure at the VA. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes too. So based on most recent General Accounting Office report, there's about $233 to $521 billion per year in lost, fraud, improper payments, abuse of federal level, all that stuff. You hear it in the media all the time. Now, the VA Office of Inspector General reported about $3.5 billion in improper payments, fraud, all that. And Medicare was about $31.7 billion. So, if there is fraud, well, let me rephrase that. There is fraud in the VA, absolutely. Is it too much? Yes, absolutely. Looking at it from a percentage of the $233 billion of fraud in the whole U.S. government, that's about 1.5%. Still big, but this gives you perspective. Medicare fraud is about 13.6%. Big, but gives you perspective as to between Medicare and VA. The VA's big, yes. Are there problems? Yes, and we're going to address them in just a few minutes. The article goes on to say, hey, the workers that are looking at these claims are pressured to approve the claims because they, as a VA employee, don't want to be labeled anti-veteran. How would it look if you were working for the VA and then all of a sudden somebody labeled you as an anti-veteran person? So if you were being overly aggressive in these claims reviews and things of that nature, I mean, you could easily be labeled anti-veteran, and that could trigger administrative, disciplinary, or reputational consequences to you. Nobody wants that. But are you anti-veteran or just undertrained? I think you're undertrained, personally. So we all heard about the PACT Act that was signed in August of 2022 by President Biden, and that expanded the presumptive service connection for toxic exposure. Now that's also cited as a contributing factor to the increase in both legitimate and what the article claims, questionable claims. And I will say that the VA has recently taken steps to modernize its rating schedule, but due to its size and bureaucracy, this modernization is slow. And hey, if you speak of reforming the VA as a politician, that could be political suicide, depending on what side of the aisle. Now, I don't understand why people can't get together for the good of the country, but that's how it is today, and that's unfortunate. Bottom line, yes, fraud exists. Most claims are legitimate, and painting all veterans as dishonest is unfair. I think this article is unfair. But oftentimes the media seeks to demonize a particular group for whatever reasons they seem necessary or want to do. I don't know. Maybe because of politics, maybe because whatever the reason, it doesn't matter. But here's the flip side of the article. Okay, here's my counter argument. Bureaucracy and barriers within the VA. While fraud should be addressed, the larger and more persistent issue lies with the VA's bureaucratic and systematic barriers that prevent you, deserving veterans, from receiving benefits promptly and fairly. I mean, it's huge. The VA is big. It's massive. There's complex regulation. The VA's adjudication process under their rules and regulations is dense. It's technical. It's rocket science, making it difficult for veterans without representation to navigate. A lot of veterans just give up. Say, I cannot handle this anymore. Boom, I'm through. I'm just not even going to deal with it. So denials often result from procedural missteps rather than lack of merit. Yes, you've got your disability period, and you've got a couple of steps done in the process, but you've missed a step in there somewhere. And so therefore you're denied. And you don't understand why you're denied. And so you write them again, and you contact them again, and you resubmit everything again. They deny you again and again and again. When you don't realize that it is a maze. The VA rules and regulations are a maze that you have to navigate. It's very difficult to do that. But one thing that you need to understand, though, is that, and this is our second point, the VA often fails in their duty to assist you. They frequently fail to assist you to obtain necessary medical or service records despite the legal duty to do that. So you have got to repeatedly file appeals or supplemental claims to correct these oversights. You've got to tell the VA that, hey, you have a duty to assist and you didn't do this. Had a Board of Appeals hearing last week where the VA said, well, we see that you were in Korea, but we don't see where you were in the DMZ of Korea. Your unit was never assigned to be in the DMZ. Well, this individual was CID. And those CID folks go everywhere, investigating all kinds of different things. And so we appealed and told the judge that, look, the VA failed in its duty to assist because they didn't look at investigative reports. They didn't look at jail sentences and all of those things that would have occurred with respect to soldiers and military personnel in the DMZ to prove that my client was actually there. So we'll wait to see. I think we're going to be successful in that. Number 3, there's been inconsistent ratings across the board. The subjective evaluations of PTSD is one of the big ones. Similar conditions lead to inconsistent outcomes among regional offices. Re-examinations can reduce your rating, and that's unpredictable. So there's got to be a way to build in some processes for rating decisions that don't rely on such subjective criteria, that are more objective in nature. For instance, you get a PTSD diagnosis from a doctor who is competent or specializes in that. Maybe that's it. I don't know what the answer is. And then you have one doctor saying that, well, Dale's knee inflection is 10%, and other doctors know it's 20%. So you got to figure out how do you mesh those together. So inconsistent ratings and subjective evaluations. And let's be honest with you, look, this takes a long time. Appeals and backlogs, despite all the reforms and all the hullabaloo going on in Congress and all of this stuff, and the Board of Veterans Appeals takes more than a year to decide a lot of cases without remedies. I mean, so you don't have an immediate remedy like you do in a court. So if you go to a regular court, you say, I've been injured, you go before jury, boom, boom, boom. That might take, 6 months or so. This takes years because you have to wade through the bureaucracy and the barriers. So continuing with the criticism of the VA bureaucracy, it's outdated. The medical criteria, they're not keeping up with the latest and greatest in medicine. The government spends billions and billions and billions of dollars every year on research and National Institutes of Health and all of these things, okay? But the VA's rating schedules is based on 1940s medical criteria. And in 1940s, it's like Star Trek now, so to speak. It's way past the 1940s, our medical technology now. I mean, they have laser surgeries, they have all of these different things that they can do to help. But because of the rating schedule, they're just not keeping up with it. So this forces you as a veteran to undergo a constant reevaluation as the medical community evolves. They should be able to do this. It should be a one and done thing. But no, the VA is continuously reevaluating you under different standards. And number 6, look, it's stressful. It takes a psychological toll on you. The VA is there to support veterans. And there's not a day that doesn't go by that a veteran doesn't tell me how much difficulty they're having with the VA and that they don't trust them. They don't think the Veterans Administration is on their side. Yeah, the process can be adversarial and demoralizing and discouraging legitimate claims. But if you have a legitimate claim, don't give up. Keep the faith. Find you an attorney who knows what they're doing. Go to your local VSO, go to the American Legion, go somewhere and find some help. Don't do this on your own. So look, while a small number of claims are fraud, it exists everywhere. The overwhelming problem is bureaucratic inefficiency, bloated bureaucracy. The VA is complex, it's inconsistent, and outdated. The rules are outdated, the medical criteria is outdated, and this is just a big waste of taxpayer funds while veterans' benefits are delayed or denying rightful benefits too. So reform should focus on smarter oversight, modernization of rating standards, modernization of the computers and equipment and all of that. They should be able to get in a fully developed claim and be able to run it through whatever their process is and let that process kick out a summary report saying A, B, C, D is missing versus going through there and manually doing all that. And I'm sure there's some technology stuff to it, but I think a lot of it is still people going line by line. And our technology is way above that. So we got to have oversight, meaningful enforcement of the VA's duty to assist you as the veteran rather than let's just go ahead and suspect the veteran is going to be filing a false claim or a fraudulent claim. That Washington Post article is not fair. Hey folks, thank you for tuning in today. Again, just a little different twist on what I think is wrong with the VA. But hey, look, check out this video. Nail your VA claim to get more support. Until next time, you have a blessed day.